Ethical companies don't make headlines. You rarely read about companies who play by the rules. But when an executive has a lapse in judgment, it's all over the news. Enron, WorldCom, Bernie Madoff, these names are all synonymous with fraud and unethical behavior. Unfortunately, it's not always easy to spot unethical behavior before it leads to disaster. So how exactly do you define ethics?
The term ethics refers to an individual's own personal set of guidelines that determines how they make decisions and how they behave on a day-to-day basis. Ethics is very different from determining whether or not something is legal or illegal. Ethics goes above and beyond the law. So an act might be considered to be legal, but it might be considered to be unethical. But these are important personal decisions, and ethics guidelines can only go so far in providing some guidance for individuals in making these sorts of difficult decisions on a day-to-day basis.
Companies are only as ethical as their employees, and employees take their cue from management. If managers, directors, and supervisors are crooked, that sets the tone for the entire organization.
The tone at the top really talks about the attitudes and importance placed by leadership on certain kinds of behavior. What's more important, doing it right or doing it profitably? And if you have a leadership team that is more focused on the ends than the means, people will start to cut corners. When it comes to ethical decision making, in many organizations, people who succeed get rewarded, not people who do the job right. And that's a very, very important difference. Companies that reward ethical behavior, reporting wrongdoing, identifying losing opportunities, walking away from bad deals, those kinds of rewards encourage ethical behavior. Most importantly, if the employees see one set of rules for them and a different set of rules for their leadership team, it's a short step there between them deciding they should play by a different set of rules too. Ethics fit everybody. So when you find an organization with unethical rank and file, you should look at the tone at the top.
Walt Pavlo was once a manager at MCI. He felt pressured by his bosses to cook the books, which led him to committing a fraud of his own, siphoning $6 million into secret accounts.
My bosses are paid much higher salaries, or getting greater stock options, or they seem to be enjoying the fruits of this manipulation much more than I am. The customers of MCIs that are out there seem to be absconding with all this money. My bosses aren't reporting these people running off with this money that we had some evidence of a misappropriation of those funds. They're not reporting to the FBI, to internal auditors, to the FCC. Everybody's getting rich in this game except me.
His fraud was a direct result of tone at the top. His managers wanted the numbers to add up. To do so meant cooking the books.
I didn't at first feel that my actions were unethical with actions that I were taking on behalf of the company. I did not. What I perceived at the time was that we have an immediate problem that needed to be addressed, but over the long term it could be remedied. So it was a little white lie that would cause no harm if the next quarter I could fix it. And I believe that was exactly what my superiors were thinking at the time too. Was it unethical in retrospect? Positively. But at the time, it was easily justified.
Walt saw everyone around him making money, and he wanted his piece of the pie. He took his cues from his supervisors and wanted in on the action.
I'm missing something in my career here. How come I don't have all of that? I don't have that today. Where is that at in my professional life? So, that part was missing. And I said, well, maybe, with this manipulation that we're doing here and with the way that these guys are kind of carousing around, maybe that's how business is done. Maybe there is some gray area that you operate in, not illegal.
It is important to know that there is a difference between ethics and the law. What is legal may not be ethical.
From a legal perspective, we write laws, rules, and regulations that specifically make certain actions improper or illegal, and they make other actions acceptable. But that doesn't have anything to do with the ethics of the situation. It may be legal to do something and may not be right to do it. And so as a result, there are too many people that get caught up in whether something is illegal or a violation of some rule without paying attention to whether it's the right thing to do. If you have told a certain individual that you'll honor a contract, whether you are legally required to honor the contract, You are ethically bound because you said you would.
As a fraud examiner, it is important to practice ethical behavior and set a visible example to the public. However, fraud examiners must also maintain the highest ethical standards even when their actions might not be seen by others.
Ethics is about making the right decision, not because everybody's looking, but because nobody's looking. It's easy to do the right thing when you're under scrutiny. It's much more difficult to do the right thing when nobody's paying attention, especially when you're under pressure in a difficult environment. And in today's economy, the importance on making ethical choices is about doing the right thing whether anybody's looking or not.
Equally as important to the fraud examiner is to ensure that their investigation is on the up and up and that no shortcuts are taken.
In my view, the most common ethical challenge that fraud examiners face is the temptation to cut corners, the temptation to call a buddy from the police force, to call your friend who used to be with you in your business and now works as an IRS examiner, that colleague that used to work with you but now works inside a bank, and asking them for information that you should not otherwise have access to. It's tempting. It seems like it's going to make a big difference. It seems like it's going to help your case. But the end result is always the same. Sooner or later, you're going to have to sit on a stand and explain where you got that information. You're going to cost yourself whatever criminal penalties may be coming and possibly cost your buddy his job. You're not doing either of yourselves any favors. What looks like a shortcut suddenly ends up being not just the long way around, but the wrong way around.
Cutting corners in a fraud examination is one way to see your name in the headlines, and not in a favorable light. That's why it's important for fraud examiners to understand ethics and its role for the investigator, the company, and its employees.